So my name is Horacio de la Iglesia. I'm a professor at University of Washington, and with me is Eric. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Eric Chudler. I'm a professor in the Department of Bioengineering at the University of Washington.
And my department is biology, and we both work in the general field of neuroscience. So we're interested in how the brain works, right? And we do research in that area, but also a lot of training. And we recently got a multi-million-dollar grant from the National Institute of Health, which is to train community college students to eventually make their way into grad school, into a PhD or a master's program in the field of neuroscience. So we're going to tell you a little bit about it and how it works kind of throughout the country, and also more specifically how it works here in the Puget Sound area. Okay, and feel free to either put questions in the chat or just interrupt us and ask questions in the middle. And otherwise, if you don't feel like interrupting us, we'll have time at the end for questions. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here to show you some slides. So let me see. Can you see the first slide of my presentation? Or yes, you can. So this is, the program that we are part of is called ENDURE, and this stands for Enhancing Neuroscience Diversity through Undergraduate Research Education and Research Education Experiences, ENDURE. And this is a program from the National Institute of Health, which is the biggest federal institution that gives grants for research. Particularly, this specifically is research in biomedical sciences, right? Anything that's related to health, NIH has the mission of funding that science. And essentially, as part of their mission, they made this new program, which is directed to train undergraduate students from underrepresented minorities. And what that means is any group that is poorly represented at the level of the PhD, the master's PhD, any level beyond undergraduate education, then the idea is that this program should help them transition into graduate education and then a career in science and technology in general. Okay, and this is throughout the years how many awards NIH has given through different states, and I'll show the map of who's gotten them. And this is it's been already going on for 10 years, and this is in general what the goals of this program is. So you still don't know what college life feels like, but a lot of college training is very academic and book oriented, and part of the gap in a lot of these diverse group of students who get into college and never get exposed to science is that they never get to work into a lab, a research lab, right? And this is one of the main goals of this program, is to get students early on as part of the undergraduate career to be part of a neuroscience research lab. And at the University of Washington, we have something like 150 independent laboratories doing research in neuroscience. So it's a great venue for students to have this experience. And there's also a history of incorporating undergraduate students into their research programs, right? So that's one of the goals. And then in general, to develop in these students technical research and professional skills, and then a network of mentors. So the idea is that if you get into this program, you will get to meet a lot of neuroscientists, not only at the level of at the professor level, but also grad students and all the range of training that you have from the undergraduate level all the way up to the professor level. And the general idea is that 5 or 10 years down the line, we should see this diverse group of students being incorporated into not only academic positions, but also industry and policy-making positions that demand this higher education, okay, and research experience. So typically the Endure programs in all the country take, they have both a school year component and a summer component, and I'll talk about that more specifically. But this, to give you an idea, first of all, that this is a program that has been running throughout the country, but also, how lucky we are. The green pointers are the places that right now have an Endure program for undergraduate training. So we're very unique here at University of Washington, and our program specifically takes people from the region of the Puget Sound. And the way we design our program is to, before I get into that, so these are just general outcomes of the program throughout the country. So this is how many students are pursuing careers in technology, math, and science in general, and which is quite a lot. So it's 74%. So that's a high success rate of the students that go through this program end up in those kind of careers. 98, about a third of them end up doing a PhD, which is kind of the highest academic level of education that you can reach in grad school, right? Many of them are now in post-baccalaureate programs or master's programs, and many of them ended up going to either medical school, DO, or MD, PhD programs. And most of them, as I said, are engaged in science or health-related professions. Okay, so this is highly, a very high rate of success in terms of the outcome of the program. So that's summary. This is all nationally. So let's move on into the one here at UW. So this is specific to the University of Washington Endure. And if you were to become an undergrad, either at a community college or even at UW, you'd have access to this program. And this is kind of thinking ahead, how could this help you in your career? So the idea is that we created a partnership with community colleges in the region, right, in the Puget Sound. And these students have an amazing array of diversity in all levels, right? Ethnic, social, cultural, discipline-wise, they're coming from different corners of the sciences. And the idea is that many of these students transfer into the UW, but sometimes they don't get exposed to science at all, to hands-on science education. And this is kind of what the goal is. And the goal is not only to give them a hands-on experience, but also to help them transition into grad school. So this is who we are. So Eric and I are the investigators that got our work, and Jessica is our administrator. She takes care of all communications and contact with students that are interested, and the applications and everything that goes on before you enter the program. And this is the first stage of this program. So if you were interested in the program, the first phase would be to take a class that it's called the Introduction to Neuroscience course. And this is taught by University of Washington faculty that have a lot of experience in teaching neuroscience. And in fact, even if you are at the community college at the time that you're taking the class, the program will actually pay your tuition to take this class. So you have your first exposure to neuroscience, okay? And these are some of the subjects that are covered in that class that, are very broad. This is a class that is meant for non-biology, non-science majors. So it's very broad, but the idea is that this is your first gate or entree into the neuroscience world, okay? And then after that, during the summer, you get into a paid full-time research program where not only you will be doing full-time research in a neuroscience lab in cutting-edge neuroscience, but also you have a lot of, several training sessions and mentoring sessions within that summer. So that the idea is that we are preparing you to become an independent researcher and a well-educated undergraduate researcher. And those training activities include career development workshops. For instance, Eric teaches a class on science communication that teaches, teaches you how science communicated to different audiences, from your grandmother to a sophisticated audience that knows about neuroscience, for instance. You also get a lot of networking opportunities, not only within the university, but also outside of the university with potential, for instance, local tech developers that hire some of our graduates and are interested in the neurosciences in general. And then at the end of that summer, there's an Endure conference which congregates all Endure trainees from all the country, and they go to one place, present their science, and that's a very unique opportunity to know people that are the same stage as you are from all over the country, okay? And this is all paid for. And there's also an internal conference within the University of Washington where you get to present your work together with many other undergraduates that are participating in research in similar programs in research experience. And then during the academic year, you continue with that training. Not only you continue with some other classes, one that is on science writing, one that is on quantitative methods in science and neuroscience, as well as continue doing paid research. So if you continue working in the lab that you got into during the summer, then we'll pay you to continue doing research. And this is a great thing because a lot of times undergraduates need actually to work to survive, right? Because not only sometimes they have to pay tuition, but also they may not have funds from their families to support themselves. So this is a great way of being able to support yourself and at the same time being investing in your career education and science career. So these are just some examples, and these for many of you maybe you may not understand the images, but there are some. This is, for instance, a cell that will give birth to neurons, which are your brain cells. And this cell, in order to give birth to neurons and to other cells, divides asymmetrically. So this is a cell dividing itself into two daughter cells. And you can see how each one looks very different because they inherit different parts of the mother cell. We have people like my lab working on the neuroscience of sleep, and this is a picture of the brain center that control all your daily rhythms, including your sleep-wake cycle. We have labs that use computer technology, not only to understand how the brain works, but also to emulate what the brain does and to that way build more sophisticated computers. We also have labs that are at the forefront of neural repair after injury. For instance, people that have spinal injury, how can you help them using technology, machines that you can tap into their nervous system in order to retrain their nervous system to, for instance, being able to reuse a limb that after an injury could not be used any longer, like an arm or leg. We have people that work in vocal learning using birds, for instance, as one model system, which is, you know, the best animal system to understand how speech is learned, and many other, as I said, many other fields in neuroscience that you could get engaged in. You know, as I said, there's about 150 laboratories doing research in neuroscience at the University of Washington. So that's kind of a brief presentation. Now, you know, we're here to answer any questions and maybe to ask you some questions too. I'll open my chat in case.
Yeah, so if you students want to type up one of your questions and send it into the chat, that would be great. You can see the chat fine, Horatio and Eric?
Yes, yeah, I can.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So yes, so this is for undergrads. So the question is this only for undergrads? And this specific program is for undergrads. The University of Washington also has programs that are for high school students. And I guess, you know, many of you may be transitioning into community colleges, or maybe some of you are already taking classes in community colleges as part of the Running Start program, or and in that case, you know, that's something. One thing you could consider is the first stage of the program, which is taking this class in introductory neuroscience, and then you apply to phase 2, which is, you know, the full-blown research experience. Yes, the class the UW students are taking. Okay, so yeah, you can check that out. You know, you can look at, I think if you get into the UW webpage, you can look for that class, Biology 130, and that will give you some information about the class itself. So this is UW Seattle, by the way. That's a very important point. And actually, we have partnerships with the Tacoma community colleges and all other community colleges. And even we're now trying to develop a partnership with Heritage University, which is far away. But one very important thing is if you get into the summer program, you get everything paid even to live in Seattle while you're working in Seattle. So even if your family lives in Tacoma, you don't need to be commuting on a daily basis to work in the lab or to take part of any of the activities. You will get your not only the summer tuition covered and a stipend to cover your life in Seattle, but you can also get money to live in the dorms during that summer. So we thought about that because we didn't want to have people, you know, commuting a couple of hours a day simply to be part of the program. Oh, that's a great question. What kind of jobs can you get if you decide to pursue neuroscience? Okay, so I'll give you some examples of some of our graduates, and Eric can give you more maybe. So of course, you know, some of our graduate students end up, for instance, teaching in community colleges. Some of your teachers, in fact, may have been through grad school here at University of Washington. We have many graduates that are teaching at community colleges. You could also teach at a four-year university. You could also go to a research institute. For instance, some of you may have heard of the Allen Institute here in Seattle. That's a private nonprofit research institution, and you could do research in an institute like that. You could also end up working for industry, and that means not only, for instance, pharmaceutical industry or biotechnology industry, where you need a graduate degree to get some of the positions. For instance, most team leaders in those companies have either a master's or a PhD. And also now it's becoming relatively common. Eric can give you some examples of this, I'm sure, for general technology developers to hire neuroscientists, because it turns out that if you go through the graduate career of neuroscience, you develop a set of skills that become very valuable, not only in a place like, say, a pharmaceutical company that is developing psychiatric drugs, but also places like Google, Amazon, Microsoft. Eric, do you have any examples of
Yeah, I do. So there's a number of different companies. For example, many of you may have heard of one of our billionaires in this country, Elon Musk. He has a company called Neuralink, and he's developing a brain-computer interface, and they are hiring many, many neuroscientists, but also other equipment manufacturers, device manufacturers. For example, there's a company called Medtronic that is based in Minnesota. They hire neuroscientists very, very often. So there's a lot of new companies. Even Facebook is hiring neuroscientists, computational neuroscientists. There are also jobs in neuroscience that are outside what you might traditionally think of. So for example, policy making. There are people in government that need to be knowledgeable about neuroscience. Even law, there are some lawyers that are specializing in neuroscience so that they can weigh in and try cases where a brain injury or some kind of other injury might be important. So there are a lot of non-traditional types of jobs that are available to students who graduate with degrees in neuroscience. Even scientific writing is available for neuroscience students. And I saw that one question asked, how did I become interested in, perhaps Horacio can also answer it, how did I become interested in neuroscience? When I started my undergraduate work, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I lived in Los Angeles, and I liked to go to the beach a lot, and I thought that maybe I can get a job at the beach. And my dad thought maybe I wanted to be a lifeguard or something. But I thought that I could get a job, doing something in the ocean. And as an undergraduate, I just took a whole bunch of different classes. And it wasn't until my junior year, when I was in college, that I took a psychology class that was taught by someone who studied the brain. And this professor made it sound like neuroscience was something very, very interesting. So I volunteered to be in his lab as an undergraduate student. And that's how I became interested in neuroscience. I don't know about you, Horacio. How did you?
Yeah, and interestingly, my career also started at the beach, but back in Argentina, where I'm originally from. That's where I did my undergrad. And yeah, I was studying biology, and I was interested in research, but I was very naive about what research meant, right? So basically, I started to work in a lab that was studying crab behavior. So this was, these animals that live in the intertidal zone, these crabs have to synchronize when they plug their burrow with the tides. And that got me interested in what we call behavioral neuroscience. What is coordinating that behavior? And that in turn got me interested in biological rhythms. And that's how I ended up studying sleep and circadian rhythms. And I came to the US to do my PhD. But as Eric said, this is two things that are, I think, critical. One is many times you are inspired by the professors, right, that are teaching science, and you see this passion and this, and suddenly you think, well, this sounds like an interesting career. But also the ability to work in a lab for me was really, defining in my career, right? And this is something that a lot of undergrads, particularly if you belong to a minority that is not highly represented in the science, are very shy about, right? It's very hard to go knock the door of a big professor at University of Washington and ask him, can I work in your lab? So the idea is that this program would make that much easier for you, right? And that not only it would make it easier on your side, but it would also make it easier on the side of the people that would take you into their lab, because we put you together with a graduate student mentor, would train you to succeed in this career, right? So by getting into the program, you'd be a highly valued undergraduate researcher.
Ashley asks, how hard is the curriculum for neuroscience? I could answer that from what I did as an undergraduate, and we can talk a little bit about the curriculum at the University of Washington. But for me, when I was an undergraduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do the first 2 years, and I took calculus, I took chemistry, I took physics, and I didn't, to be completely honest with you, I didn't do very well in my chemistry classes. But after I learned that I wanted to do neuroscience, and that's what I started to concentrate on, those classes, because they were so interesting to me, came to me very easily. So when I found a subject that I was very interested in, it wasn't like going to school anymore. It was like, this is what I want to do. So once I found the curriculum that I wanted to study, the material came much easier to me. And I agree completely with Horacio. The last 2 years that I was an undergraduate, I spent volunteering in a research lab. And that was critical. Even as an undergraduate, I was able to publish in scientific journals. So that will carry you very, very far. So research experience, like what we offer in the UW Endure program, is, I think, essential. And it can really give you a strong background and a strong resume when you apply to graduate school, or even, as Gabby asks, medical school too. A lot of medical students have neuroscience backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think, going back to the research experience, a lot of these classes that Eric said, I didn't do well in chemistry, it's very hard to enjoy them when you don't have the context to enjoy them, right? As soon as you start doing research, all these, quantitative skills, chemistry knowledge, basic biology knowledge suddenly takes a completely different meaning, because it's not only helping on the research life, but also because suddenly you see that everything that it's in books, it's completely intertwined with what you're doing in the lab. And in fact, you realize that everything that it's on a textbook, on a science textbook, comes from science experiments, right? And that's kind of a very synergistic effect of doing research in a lab as an undergrad, that you suddenly find a new meaning to everything that you are studying in your undergraduate career. But as Eric said, training in a field like neuroscience and an undergraduate research training will help you in any career outcome, because I think you gain a set of skills that becomes highly valuable for any graduate career that you may want to apply. For instance, I'll give you an example. Medical schools now are taking, they're really poaching upon graduates from bioengineering, right? Which is the field that Eric is in, and this is because they really, those graduates from careers like bioengineering have quantitative skills and a whole set of skills that are highly valued in the medical career, right? So you may have a better chance with a degree in bioengineering, right, than maybe other degrees, right, that are more classically related to medicine. So that's just one example. And again, the curriculum for neuroscience, it's not an easy curriculum like any career, any science career. It's demanding, right? but that's also what prepares you for the future, right? And that's why we're interested in easing this path for these students that are coming from community colleges.
And sometimes, you know, high school students and even undergrads don't really understand what graduate school is all about. I certainly didn't know when I was an undergraduate, right before I graduated from UCLA for my undergraduate degree, the professor whose lab I was working in asked me, "What are you doing after you graduate from college?" And I said, "I don't know. What are you supposed to do?" Neither of my parents were scientists, so I didn't know what you were supposed to do. And he said, this professor, that you're kind of good at this science stuff. Why don't you go to graduate school? And I thought he was crazy, because what do I want to go to more school for? I went to high school for 12 years and then I went to college for 4 years. What do I want to go to graduate school for another 4 or 5 years? And he explained that in graduate school, yes, you take a few more classes maybe for your first and second year, but mainly what you're doing is research in graduate school. And in fact, when you're a graduate student in the sciences, not so much if you're a graduate student in history or English, they pay you. So as a graduate student, you get paid to go to school. You get a stipend and your tuition is covered. So it's a great career, and it's funded for a long period of time once you get into graduate school.
Yeah, so you finish with a very a powerful degree, and you don't owe any money, any loans that you had to take to go through. Unlike if you do an MBA or masters in social work or any other of those careers where you have to pay a lot of money.
Right, and a program like what we were describing, the UW Endure program, as an undergraduate, we're providing you with, it's not a lot of money, but it's a good part-time job during the academic year. It's not a full-time job. We're only expecting students to work maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 hours a week, probably not even 20 hours a week, especially not early on. So yeah, it's a part-time job, but it really gives you a little bit of money, helps you out during the academic year. Gabby asked, does prestige at a college matter as an undergraduate? I mentioned UCLA. I don't know. What do you think, Horacio? I don't sit on the admissions committee. Horacio maybe looks
No, I'll tell you what, I'm one of the directors of the Neuroscience program at University of Washington. So I look at all the applicants that want to come to do a PhD in our program. And, where you did your undergrad, it's not really important. So it's important whether you have research experience while you're undergrad, that would be at the top of the list. And whether that research experience was in a laboratory where they allowed you to work independently and to develop your own research project. And that's essentially possible in virtually all the universities, all the four-year universities that are decent will have the opportunity for you to do research. So we don't look at where you're coming from. We look at your transcript to make sure that you have the right background and that you did relatively well in key classes, and at your research experience, and also, of course, your statements and kind of, we want to know why you want to get into a program in neuroscience for grad school.
Ashley asks, is graduate school to get your master's degree? Well, you can get a master's degree, but to be an independent scientist, an independent researcher, really you should go all the way for a PhD. And many programs don't admit students only for a master's degree. They admit you to a PhD program. And really, to become an independent researcher, you really need your PhD, because there's a tremendous amount of competition, as you can imagine, for different jobs. And so it's really the PhD that I would highly suggest. Now, saying that, I do also have a master's degree, but I kind of got that by accident, in that as I was admitted to a PhD program, but I did enough research to write up a master's thesis. So I did that, but that was not my intent. My intent was always to go for a PhD, and the master's degree was just something that I got in passing. But it's really a PhD that is that you want to become an independent researcher.
Yes, and the PhD really trains you to do research, right? That whether it's a PhD in physics, in neuroscience, or in biology, that's its main goal, right? A master's typically trains you for a more pragmatic goal, like, you know, you can do a master's in biotechnology, for instance, and you're going to be most likely working at a company that does biotechnology, but you won't have as a diverse range of research applications that you could work on.
Maybe Kevin, is it okay if I typed in my email address in case students have questions for me?
Yeah, absolutely. You can share your contact
So if anybody has any follow-up questions, or you can just,
and I'll type mine
there on the screen. It's just my last name at uw.edu.
Yeah, and Anna asked, saying that this may be a bit off topic, but what would you do with the job in bioengineering? She was wondering.
Very similar to what Horacio and I just discussed for a neuroscience degree. You can teach, you can do research, you can get jobs in a industry at a biotech company. You can do consulting work for government work. Very, very similar type jobs would be available. And Jason asks, what's the best way to volunteer work with professors? For high school students, I mean, to be completely honest, my own opinion, Horacio might have a different opinion than me. It is possible for high school students to work in labs, but it's a little bit difficult because the University of Washington has certain regulations having to do with minors being under the age of 18. So it is possible. Many of those volunteer positions and work positions go to undergraduate students, as you can imagine, because they're paying customers to the university. So they are really the first people that get those types of jobs. That's not to say it's not possible. And there are programs on campus specifically for high school students to work into research labs. So sometimes it's just an email to professor asking, do you have an open position? To do that, don't be afraid and don't be worried if you hear the word no, because a lot of labs just already are full of students. But it's really just a cold email that is sent to a professor to find out if that position is open. But again, those positions often go to undergraduate students who are already university students, because that's kind of, they need capstone projects and other projects as undergraduate students.
And yeah, I guess, yeah, I totally agree with that. And, you know, I think that a few, you know, I've taken maybe 3 high school students into my lab, or 4, and usually they will be working on data analysis or things where they don't need to have, because, you know, one of the limitations is that in order to do experiments in a lab, you need to go through a lot of trainings. And sometimes if you're only going to be 2 months in a lab, it's not worth going through all of them before you do that. But I think the best chance is to go through one of those programs that are specifically for high schools, because they have all that part a little bit more oiled, right? And you can sort of blend into the system more easily. But yeah, you know, write to professors that if you're interested in the research of anybody that you've seen their webpage, you're always, you know, welcome to send an email and say, look, I'd be interested in learning something over the summer. Some schools have these as part of their training program. For instance, many of the international baccalaureate high schools, they need to do an internship in the last year. But other high schools, students just do it independently and seek for, opportunities, look for opportunities.
And the University of Washington has a website. I think if you just search University of Washington high school science programs, you'll see some websites that they are taking high school students, and they have an organized way of doing that and placing students. So I would search the university, if you're interested in the University of Washington, search the University of Washington website for high school research experience, and you'll probably come up with some possibility.
And advice for students who want to get into neuroscience, I'd say, apply to a community college, start there, and then join our program. That's one good way to do it.
And if you're going straight into undergraduate, try to get into a research lab. Maybe not your first year, because get your grades up. But certainly by your sophomore, junior year, it's time to find a lab and really even publish papers as an undergraduate, and that will really set you on a good pathway.